First of all, Mel Robbins, I can't believe I've never met you. Welcome to our little podcast. Next question. Compared to yours, it's kind of little.
Well, it's still important, and I cannot believe I haven't met you either because I have admired you and watched you from afar forever. So thank you for the opportunity to meet you. Thank you for the opportunity to sit down and talk to you. Thank you for the opportunity to spend time with the person that is spending time together with us right now. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I am too. And before we talk about your new book that you wrote with your daughter Sawyer called The Let Them Theory, which I have a lot of questions about, I have to ask you a little bit about your life, Mel, because we're just getting to know each other. I've read a lot of profiles of you, and you're kind of exploding right now, although you've been working very hard for, I guess, the last 13 years or so, building your reputation and your company and your more recently, your podcast, but you've been writing books, you've been doing audiobooks, you've been doing TED Talks. So you have been working hard. So how did you become Mel Robbins? How did this happen?
God.
And I love that you give advice, but how did you get to a point where you felt like, yeah, I know enough about the world and about life to give advice?
You know, the way that I got to where I am is first, I screwed up my own life. Like, I have to learn everything the hard way. I don't know what it is about me, but I either have to fall into a hole because I'm not paying attention, or I have to dig one for myself and then sit in it and wallow and wish somebody would come and help me and solve my problems. And I have learned over and over and over in my life that no one is coming to save you, and that your life is your responsibility. And let's look at the word responsibility. Responsibility is the ability to respond. And I didn't know until recently that we give so much power to things that are beyond our control. Whether it is your past, it's already happened, and at any moment you can decide that you're going to become a different person, and you become a different person by figuring out what direction you want to move in, and then slowly but surely aligning your actions every day with the kind of person you'd like to be or the things it is that you'd like to do. And one of the things that surprises me now that I look back, and I think it's the reason why I'm so driven to share, to teach, to have conversations like the one that you and I are having today with the person that's listening to us right now, is that I have caused myself so much headache and so much heartache, and I've caused other people so many headaches and so much heartache, Katie, because I didn't know. And I didn't know what the problem was. I didn't know what I was dealing with. And it covers everything. It covers everything from, I had no idea, for example, that I struggled with ADHD and dyslexia until I was 47 years old. No idea. I am part of a lost generation of women who were diagnosed with anxiety in their late teens and their 20s, when the real issue all along is that you had undiagnosed dyslexia or undiagnosed ADHD. And I didn't know that the real issue wasn't anxiety. See, anxiety is a symptom. It's a symptom that something is not getting addressed. And instead, what happened is I would sit in classrooms, and clearly I've got a brain that's not able to learn the way that public schools are teaching. And I also have ADHD, which presents other issues around the ability to direct attention. But back in the 80s, nobody knew that girls could get ADHD because they had only studied boys. And so there's this entire generation of women that were diagnosed with anxiety, medicated for anxiety, that are now finding out that they have ADHD later in life. And you want to know the number one way that women find out that they have ADHD?
How?
Their kids are going through the process in elementary school and middle school of being assessed for, quote, behavioral problems. And then a neuropsych eval, lo and behold, turns out that they have a learning style difference or they have attention issues. And if you don't address this, you have a human being that can't do well.
That's so funny that you mention your kids, because my daughter always tells me I have ADHD. I don't think I have ADHD, Mel.
Well, if your life is working well and you're not experiencing anxiety, then maybe you do or maybe you don't.
Yeah.
But for me, I could never understand why am I so competent and I can't remember birthdays? Why is it that I'm always running late? Why do I have to have 50,000 things going on? Why
But
am
you
I
really managed so well. You went to Dartmouth, right?
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
it's hard to get into Dartmouth,
Not in
Missy.
1986.
It
Let's
was
be
still
real.
hard. No.
Oh, come on now.
No,
I
I
rocked.
disagree. It was still hard to get into
I was
Dartmouth.
the
So you had to do pretty well. Then you went to law school.
I did.
So
I did.
I'm just saying you were a highly functioning individual, right?
Yes, I was high functioning, but let's talk about law school. So if you have dyslexia, and by the way, Dartmouth was basically one giant wash for me. I don't remember it because I was constantly in a state of fight or flight because I had actually not been diagnosed with anxiety yet. So I went through college in a constant state of feeling on edge and overcompensating by drinking, procrastinating, all-nighters. I was a walking red flag, Katie, because I didn't know what the problem was with me. And so I was the kind of person that, yes, I could freestyle really well, but it nearly killed me to finish a paper. I couldn't understand why everybody else seemed to have it together, and I would sit in the stacks at Baker Library, talking to everybody, could never seem to focus, and then all of a sudden, it's the night before the big papers due, and now that it's a crisis, my body is organizing around an emergency and flooding with all these neurochemicals to get me to finally focus and get the dang thing done. That was my whole life. And then I get to law school, which, by the way, I applied to law school because I didn't know what else to do. And my boyfriend at the time was going to graduate school, and I was working as a temp in a law firm. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll apply to law school. So I get to law school, and I realize the second I get there, it's not for me. The people are not for me. There's a number of wonderful people and friends that I made, but I don't want to sit in a classroom and have the Socratic method where basically people are getting called on like popcorn popping. And I have not read the 120 pages of material about constitutional law because I can't focus. And I have woken up in the morning, and my morning routine consists of waking up in a panic, grabbing a cigarette, drinking a giant cup of dark black coffee at Dunkin' Donuts while I'm smoking a cigarette, heading to, that's a morning routine, by the way. Like, you know how people are like, I don't have a morning routine. I'm like, yeah, you do. You hit the snooze button 5 times, and then you skip breakfast, and then you are raging as you're driving to work. That's actually a morning routine, if that's your pattern. So I didn't know, but here's what I figured out. I figured out that if I raised my hand immediately, that either the professor would call on me, and then I could say something that was just inconsequential, and then I was safe the rest of the class. And if they didn't call on me on you raise the second time, and you make sure they see you, because then when they see you, even if they don't call on you, and then you're safe. Now I can put my head down because I've actually tried to participate, and the likelihood is I'm not getting called on.
So you're gaming your law school professors.
Absolutely. And anybody that has some issue that, whether it's dyslexia or ADHD, one of two things happen. Either you become hypervigilant and you overcompensate and you figure out how to survive inside the system that you're in, whether that's a family that has parents that aren't around or that are emotionally volatile, or it's a classroom where you really cannot function at the level that it's being asked of you. So that's one avenue. The second avenue is, and this is heartbreaking, and I think this is tied to the mission that I have and why I'm so driven and why I have stumbled into the work that I do. And this sentence that I'm about to share with you comes from a remarkable man that we just had on my podcast. His name is Dr. Stuart Ablon. Now, Dr. Stuart Ablon is a psychologist in Boston. He's been practicing for 30 years. He runs something called Think Kids at Mass General Brigham, which is the #1 research hospital on the planet. And in his 30 years of research, he has determined that kids do well when they can. And if they can't do well, It's because some fundamental skills, typically 5 skills, one of them or all of them are missing. And if a kid, for example, doesn't know how to communicate what's wrong or communicate what they need, they can't do well. If a child is in a classroom and they don't have the skills of attention or language processing, they can't do well. If a child has some sort of kind of social awkwardness and they don't know things, which is a skill, by the way, that if you walk up to a group of people, don't be up in their grill because it makes you feel weird, right? And instead, you can learn to look at the space between people's feet and kind of approximate yourself there. That's actually a skill that some kids don't know. And what happens in the world is that when somebody doesn't do well, they naturally start to exhibit challenging behavior. And that was me. And I didn't understand why. And over and over and over again, whether it was anxiety or it was undiagnosed dyslexia or ADHD, or it was unresolved issues from my past that we all have, or just simply not understanding that in life there are always things that you can control, and there's so much that's out of your control, and when you focus on things that are out of your control, it creates stress and anxiety for you. And so I would take Dr. Stuart Ablon's statement that kids can do well when they can, and I would say that adults do well when they can. And that when you can't do well, you will exhibit behavior that confuses and frustrates other people. And we live in a world where we punish people for not doing well, and where we exclude them and distance ourselves from them. And I'm here to say there's a completely different way to approach both those periods of your life when you're not doing well, and there's ways for you to be more supportive and compassionate and understanding when other people in your life are not doing well. And when you start to look at yourself through a lens that, number one, if I'm not doing well, there's probably some problem that's underneath all this that I've never actually realized is an issue for me. And until I figure that out, I'm going to continue to challenge. I'm going to continue to struggle. And the good news is, as soon as you kind of know what you're dealing with or what you would like to change in your life, there are simple things you can do.
The first book, I guess, or one of the first books you wrote was The 5-Second Rule. Mm-hmm. And that was when you were 41, you were $800,000 in debt.
That's a lot of money.
Unemployed. You were watching your husband's restaurant business crumble. Mm-hmm. That's what you're writing in the book. It said, you write, it felt like we had failed at life with no hope of ever escaping the debt. Under the weight of this situation, you found yourself procrastinating and avoiding solving the problems. But then you were like, let's try this 5-second rule. I mean, how did you come up with that? And what is it exactly?
Okay,
yeah.
The 5-second rule is a little mindset hack that helps you push through any excuse or any emotion or any feeling that you have so you take action. And the thesis is very simple. Just like food drops on the floor and you have 5 seconds to pick it up, you know, blow the dog hair off and then you can eat it. You have 5 seconds to act on an idea before your brain contaminates your will to move. It's that simple. And what happened for me, here's the true story, is, and again, I'm going to jump back and forth between what I knew then and what I know now. Because when you find yourself stuck in life, whether it's crippling grief, which I know you've experienced, or it is all of a sudden the world changes or your job changes or circumstance changes in a relationship and you find yourself single, or you find yourself in a new chapter, or you find yourself as an empty nester, or you find yourself in a situation where you don't like what's happening in your community or the world around you, it is normal to feel stressed about that.
And paralyzed, really,
yes.
Right?
And actually, in the moment, if the issue is big enough, feeling stressed or paralyzed is a sign that you're mentally well, because the response is actually appropriate to the thing that you're dealing with. The issue is that none of us understand that when you get to a point where you're super stressed about something and you start to feel anxious, which is simply just feeling stressed all the time. I mean, anxiety and stress are the same physiological things in your body. I didn't know this at the time when I was 41. I just knew that I had $800,000 in debt, that the bills were piling up on the kitchen counter. I couldn't open them. I didn't have money in the bank anyway. We were struggling to get gas in the tank and food on the table. I hadn't told my parents. I hadn't told my friends. Friends had invested. We're also in a community where we have lots of friends and you're trying to keep up and you don't want people to know. And so I did feel paralyzed. And the thing that's interesting that I really want to underscore for particularly the person that's listening and spending time with us right now, whether this applies to you in your life at this moment or it applies to somebody that you love who is seemingly stuck, is that nobody's actually stuck. A person who's stuck isn't actually paralyzed because you're in deep conflict with yourself. You know when you're not thriving. You know when you're making decisions that are taking your life down the wrong road. Like the hardest person working in a classroom, or the hardest working person in a classroom is not the person getting A's. It's the person that's failing because they're struggling all the time. Even if it looks like they're not doing anything on the outside, they're constantly in conflict knowing that they are not reaching their potential, that they're not trying how they can. Same thing is true with health. Someone in your life that you wish that would be healthy, we make the mistake of thinking they're not motivated. That's not true at all. They're in deep conflict with themselves. They know that there are things that they can do. It's not an issue of willpower, it's an issue of skill. And so I think that's an important backdrop because I didn't know any of this. And so you can start to feel like you're the only one that's trapped, that you're the idiot that can't figure this out, that somehow you screwed up, when truly it's not just you, that there are things you can do. And for me, I knew what I needed to do. I'm not an idiot. I knew that if we're that much in debt, Katie, I need to get a job. I could ask for help. I need to get my butt out the front door and go for a walk because all the experts say it's going to make me feel better. I know that drinking half a bottle of bourbon every night is probably not helping the situation. Neither is waking up hungover and then hitting the snooze button 6 times. But you get so stuck in the stress of it, and that keeps you in it. And so what happened, and this is the true story, it was February 2008. And so also the housing crisis going down. And I'm sitting in front of the television. I'm like, that's it, Mel Robbins. Tomorrow morning, woman, it's the new you. Tomorrow morning, you have got to stop drinking. You have got to stop screaming at Chris. It's not like he tried to fail at the restaurant business, you know. You got to call your parents. You got to pick up the phone and look for a job. And by God, woman, when that alarm rings, you cannot lay there like a human pot roast marinating in fear, staring at the ceiling. You have got to get your butt out of bed and get those kids on the bus. And all of a sudden, this rocket ship launches across the television screen. And it gave me this crazy idea. It was like a sign from, it's a sign from God. Tomorrow morning, when that alarm rings, Mel, you are going to launch yourself out of bed like a rocket ship. You're going to move so fast, you're not going to be in that bed when that anxiety hits. Now, it could have been the 4 bourbon Manhattans that gave me that idea because I was drinking an awful lot back then. And it sounds kind of stupid.
By the way.
Yeah, right? They're delicious, especially this time of year. So, but it sounds stupid. So the next morning, the alarm rang. And that's when I saw something that I'd never seen before. And once you embrace what I'm about to share with you, you will never look at life the same again. There is a 5-second window that defines your whole life. It determines how much money you make. It determines how healthy you are. It determines what kind of relationship you have with your kids and with your parents and with your loved ones. It's this 5-second window between knowing what you need to do and actually doing it. There's this moment of hesitation that we all have in the small moments in life, where you have this instinct that you should pick up the phone or start the conversation or get off the couch and go to the gym. And instead of actually doing it, we make this fatal mistake where we hesitate and then we stop and think about how we feel about doing it. And so that morning, Tuesday morning, February 2008, the alarm rings and I immediately remember that dumb idea to launch out of bed. And I stop and think, do I feel like getting out of bed? And I'm like, it's dark, it's cold, it's winter in Massachusetts. How the hell is this going to help? I'm $800,000 in debt. I don't want to get out of bed. And I start reaching for the snooze button. because it was a habit. And a habit's just a pattern. And for whatever reason, I just started counting backwards that morning, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then I stood up. And it struck me, like I was kind of like, that's strange. And I was in such a state of desperation that I just dismissed my kind of pragmatic, cynical side. And I thought, what if this is a sign from God? What if this is a magic trip? What if this works? And so I made myself a promise. I said, any moment that I have today where I know what I could do, but I don't feel like it, I'm just going to count backwards and see what happens. And that was the beginning of an entirely new life. I walked into the kitchen and my husband was standing there and he had the fridge open, Katie, and he was looking for breakfast. And yeah, that thing happens where you see somebody you love and you just want to kill them. You know how that happens? And so I see Chris, this poor guy.
I thought you were going to say, and you just feel so bad that they don't have anything to eat and you want to take care of them.
No, because here's the thing. When you're in a position in your life where you're not happy, it's so much easier to be angry than it is to be afraid. And the truth is, I was scared. I was scared because I could see that my behavior was not going to help me fix this. I could see how Chris was struggling. I could see that our kids were picking up on this and it was affecting them. And I was scared. And so I see him, but, I just wanted to kill him because it's easier to kind of point the finger and blame other people. But my big message, particularly with this let them theory, is that there's always 3 fingers pointing back at you, always. The power is within you and your response to any situation. That's what defines you, and that's what determines whether or not your life is going to change and move in a different course, or whether or not you're going to continue to allow your feelings and your stress and your emotions to drive how you show up in life. And so I just counted backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, because the truth is I love Chris. I don't want to be screaming at him. And as I counted backwards, I just was able to settle myself and speak from a place of my values. I see the phone, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm picking up the phone and I'm starting to tell people and ask for help and starting to network. I need a job, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm grabbing my shoes and going out the door. And 1 5-second move at a time. 2 things happen. Number 1, I learned a skill that everybody in life needs to know, that anybody in life can learn. It is the skill that makes you happy and successful. It is the skill that will make you proud of yourself. And that skill is learning how to take action no matter how you feel. And you can count backwards 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And what I know now, based on the fact that this is spread around the world, it's used in clinical settings. It's really effective for OCD, PTSD. Therapists and psychologists use it with anxiety. It works with kids. We know of more than 1,000 people who have taken the time to write to us who have stopped themselves from attempting suicide by counting backwards 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and reaching out for help. I mean, this thing is remarkable because your life doesn't change by thinking about it. Your life changes by doing something about it. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, what it does is it cuts through all of the noise and the emotion and the fear and the habits, and it directs you to take action. And the reason why it works is because when you stop and you start to think, do I want to go to the gym? Do I not want to go to the gym? I don't really feel like going to the gym. If you start to think about something for more than 5 seconds, and psychologists call this a bias towards thinking, you drift into the part of the brain where all of your default patterns and your default way of talking to yourself is stored. This is where all of your bad habits are. It's where you start to move towards what feels easy naturally instead
of rationalize,
yeah,
right?
Exactly, or ruminate. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 helps you push toward what feels hard, and it also, counting backwards, this is what's fascinating about it, now that we've researched this extensively with some of the world's leading neuroscientists and psychologists, counting backwards is an intentional action. When you first start doing it, it requires focus. So what you're doing is you're interrupting your mind from going to default or a subconscious pattern, and you're bringing your prefrontal cortex online. And
Your
that's
executive functioning.
correct.
Yeah.
And that's the part of the brain that you need in order to take a new action or learn new behavior or control your response. It's what puts you in charge of yourself. That's what it's doing. And the super nifty part of it is the second you start counting 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you've actually taken the first action. It's like that first domino that falls that hits the second domino, 5, 4. By the time the second domino is falling to the third, it can knock over something 10 times its size because now you have inertia and momentum on your side. And that's why this thing works. And so one reason why I've gotten to where I am is because, and it hasn't been glamorous, it's been grueling. There is nothing kind of unique about my path to success. What you're seeing now is 15 years of boring, tedious, pain in the ass reps. Just like going to the gym and lifting a weight. That is not glamorous. It is not interesting. It's not fun. It is what gets you the result. And so I didn't do anything special. I got out of bed on the days I don't feel like it. I put in the work. I kept trying. I picked myself up on those days where I would watch you and go, when is Katie Couric going to notice that I'm doing something? When is somebody going to talk about the 5-second rule book? It was the 5th most read book of Amazon in 2017. It's the number one self-published audiobook in history. Why is nobody talking about this? And I would say to myself, and I need you as you're listening to me and Katie today, to really embrace what I'm about to tell you. And it's that if it's not happening, it's not meant to happen yet. That if you are willing to put your head down and be a good person and do the boring, grueling work, which is simply taking one more step forward today, it's simply showing up and being a little bit better person than you were yesterday. That's all it is. And if you give up your timeline, I promise you, your life will lead you exactly where you're meant to go, and it will be bigger and different and more amazing because that's how it works for everybody.
And now here we are. 7 years later. I guess the book came out in 2018. 2017. Uh-huh. So here we are 7 years later. Yeah. And your journey has continued.
Yes.
And you are still writing and thinking about ways that could improve your life that as a result is improving the lives of so many other people. Yeah. And your new book, which you wrote with your daughter Sawyer, is called the Let Them Theory. So that's obviously the focus of our conversation today because we want everyone to read this book. And I know you just had an interview with Oprah, and she said, I mean, this is a woman who knows about self-help, Mel. Yeah. And what did she say to you about your book?
I'm still processing it. She said that this is the single best self-help book she has ever read.
Wow.
And that it is the message and tool that humanity needs right now for this extremely overwhelming and challenging and conflict-driven moment in time that we're all living in. Because ultimately, the Let Them theory is about what you can control and what you can't control. And it is ultimately a book that will fundamentally change your relationship to yourself and your relationship to other people.
This all started in May of 2023.
Yes.
When you posted on TikTok about the Let Them theory, a video that went uber viral.
Yes.
You were, I guess, writing the book at the time?
Oh, no. No.
So the TikTok video prompted the book.
Well, what happened is I had an experience. I never thought I'd be sitting across from you, Katie, saying I discovered something at a high school prom that changed my life. But it was our son. We have 3 children. They're 25, 23, and 19. And
it was Oakley, right?
Yeah, Oakley was at his prom. And I was your typical psycho micromanaging mother, from the corsage to the tux to the shoes to the this to the that. And we're at the pre-prom party. And our daughter, Kendall, who's 23, was home from college at the time. And they're taking photos. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Katie, it starts pouring rain. And so you got 20 kids in black tie and all these parents milling about, and they're about to all leave to head out, and nobody has umbrellas and nobody has any raincoats. And by the way, for some reason, all the kids in southern Vermont drive to the prom, which was news to me, you know, raising our daughters in Boston where everybody had buses and this and that. And so I'm like, wait, you're driving? Why are you borrowing dad's truck? Like, what's going to happen with that? I don't understand this. And now it's raining. And then I say to Oakley, where are you guys going for dinner? As they're trying to head out the door. And the parents are like, wait, you can't go yet. And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, you don't have reservations for prom? And he's like, no. And I turned to my husband. I'm like, they don't have reservations for prom? And he's like, I guess not. And I'm like, why? I don't know why it bothered me so much, but it bothered me, Katie. And so I go, well, hold on. Let me see if I can find you something. And now all the parents are milling about, and I'm starting to, you know, when you get that like volcano of emotion that just,
yeah.
You know,
I'm familiar with that.
and as it's coming up and you feel the words coming out of your mouth or the text that you're about to kind of send coming, and I'm starting to feel that wave of panic hit as I'm trying to find a reservation, and we're trying to get 20 kids to not run out into a rainstorm and just destroy their hair and their dresses and their shoes. My daughter sees it coming, and she reaches out and grabs my arm and yanks me to her, and she like grits her teeth, and she's like, Mom, you're being annoying. If they want to go to the taco stand, let them. If they want to be in the party, let them. If he's going to ruin his shoes, let them. And she started saying this cascade of, let her ruin her hair, let the mud get on her dress, let them do what they want to do. And she kind of ended it with, Mom, it's their prom, not yours, let them. And that final let them was like a sledgehammer. And all of a sudden, my shoulders just dropped. And I thought, let them. Like, why do I care? Like, why am I not thinking about where I'm going to dinner? And so I said to Oak, hey, Oak. And he turned around. He's like, what? You know, because, of course, I've been super irritating and annoying. And I'm like, nothing, bud. Here's $40. Go have fun. And then you saw his shoulders drop. And there was this huge smile that hit his face. And that was that. And the next day I woke up and I'm at the grocery store. And there's like 5 people in front of me and 1 cashier. And it's like, beep, beep, beep. And again, that sort of like volcano of emotion starts rising up. And I start, what do you do in line when that's happening?
You get exasperated and
Yes.
you're rolling your eyes and you're like clearing your throat.
Yes.
And you're getting aggravated.
Yes, and you now think that you know how to run a grocery store better than the manager. And I said, let them. And my shoulders dropped. And I just started using it, and I started to notice something. Oh my God, people are really annoying. Holy cow, people's moods are really getting to me. Wow, that Zoom meeting really drained me. Holy cow, I've got opinions about traffic. I've got opinions about my mother-in-law's expectations. I've got and it occurred to me, holy cow, I'm allowing so many people and so much stuff that's beneath me and that is not my job to manage to drain the 2 most precious resources I have in life, time and energy. So your life is determined by what you put your time into and what you pour your energy into. And so I've got news for you. If you are tired, or you are overwhelmed, or you feel like you're last on your list, or you're just frustrated with some dynamic in a relationship, or you're frustrated with the world at large, or you're just not as happy as you'd like to be, the problem isn't you. The problem is that you unknowingly give power to other people and to things that you can't control. And all day long, you're allowing people who are annoying or who are emotionally immature or who are doing things that you're never going to be able to control anyway to impact you. And it's stupid. And so I used this for a week, and I'm telling you, Katie, just like I have never felt this peaceful. I have never felt like I truly could put boundaries up between me and the world. I had never felt more in control. And so I naturally went to social media and I shared this simple thing. And I was literally like, you know, if your friends don't invite you out, let them. If your kids don't want to help you do something, let them. If the person that you're dating doesn't want a commitment, let them. Let people reveal who they are and what they care about. Stop trying to manage them. Because when somebody reveals who they are and what they care about, now you get to choose. You get to choose whether or not you pour time and energy into this. In 24 hours, it was 15 million views.
Why did it resonate so much, you think?
Why do you think it did?
Maybe because increasingly people have felt out of control in this crazy world we're living in for a whole host of reasons.
Yes.
And maybe their impulse to control has gotten stronger as the world's gotten scarier. And so maybe to Oprah's point, at this moment in time, this is what people really needed to hear because people feel out of control. And I guess your response is to control more when you feel that way, right?
Exactly. And actually, you're the first person that has explained it that way. And you're exactly right. And one of the things that is so powerful about this, especially in this moment in time, is that ultimately every human being has a hardwired need to be in control. It is a survival mechanism. It is something that you will never get rid of, and we've been working against it. See, when you're in control of your life, you actually feel safe, and you feel confident, and you feel like
less scared.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Whether you're scared because your adult children aren't doing well, or you're scared because your parents' health are failing, or whether you're scared because of the state of politics, or you're scared because you see the rising cost of living, or you're scared because you have a health diagnosis. And so we need to feel like we're in control of our decisions, of our actions, of our future, of our lives. And we also, by the way, and this is where it gets tricky, is that when somebody around us does something that worries us or hurts us or frustrates the hell out of us or stresses us out, guess what? It makes us feel like we're not in control because now we're worried about you. So then what do? We try to control you.
And fix problems,
yes,
right?
Yes, but then here's the problem. Katie, if your behavior is stressing me out and I then step in and try to tell you what to do, guess what? You also have a need to be in control of yourself. And so you are going to push back against me. And so we have gotten into this state in our families, in our love lives, with our kids, with our friends, and even at a global level when you talk about global conversations or the way that people are so polarized, we have gotten to a point where our need to control has spiraled out of control. And the fundamental thing that I'm trying to make everybody understand is this. If there is one thing on the planet you will never be able to control, it's what another person does, says, or feels, period. Any energy you put into trying to control what somebody does, or trying to manipulate how they feel, or trying to ensure that they're going to think a certain thing will backfire. It will create more stress and frustration for you, and it will create more friction and tension in your relationships. I worked against this fundamental law in every relationship I had for 54 years. And when I discovered the let them theory, and I started saying let them, because here's how the theory works. There's two parts. Any moment that you're frustrated, you read the headlines, you're frustrated. For me this morning, I literally got stuck in an elevator and had to be rescued by the New York City Fire Department. Shout out to Ladder 7. You guys were amazing. We were in there for 50 minutes. Do you want to know how I didn't have a panic attack?
How?
I recognized in the moment what's in my control, what's not. So let them take their time. Let them figure out how to do this safely. Let them do what they're going to do.
The same thing happened to me on Saturday night, but only for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But your mind can start spinning very quickly.
Yeah.
So when you say let them, you recognize there is nothing about being in an elevator that you have control of. So when you say it, you're actually detaching from the thing you can't control. And so therefore you're protecting yourself from unnecessary stress and you're conserving your energy. And then you say the second part, which is let me.
Right. I was going to ask you about let me. But before we talk about let me, Mel, let me ask you about one of your let them examples.
Yes.
And it was letting your kids, if your kids don't want to do something, let them. So I have to say, I had an immediate reaction to that. And I sort of envisioned my parents wanting me to go to Sunday school when I was a kid. And or if I wanted my kids to go somewhere because we had made a commitment to be somewhere. I can't even think of an example. I mean, if you just let them, isn't that an invitation to raise really entitled, spoiled brats?
Absolutely.
And that example, honestly, I was like, I'm with Mel all the way, but not with kids necessarily.
Well, it depends on the age of the kids. And it also depends on the dynamic. And so first, this is really a book about adult relationships. And so with kids, you're actually in charge. And there's a huge distinction in this book. And at the very end of the book, in the appendix, there's a guide that you can download that is all about how you use this with small children versus how you use this with young adults and adult children.
Got it. But what about, say, I was envisioning teenagers, right? Who didn't want to go to a funeral. I'm just throwing that out as an example. I'm not going to let them say, I don't want to go.
Well, here's what you can say. You have to let them say they don't want to go because that's what they're saying. It's already happened. But then you say the let me part and you realize that my control here is truly in what I think, what I do, and how I react to my own feelings. Because if a kid doesn't want to go, that might be a really mentally well response to a very overwhelming situation that scares the hell out of them.
Okay, yeah, maybe don't use funeral as an example, like a grandmother's birthday.
Yes, of course, no one wants to go. Yes. And so you're going to just, you say let them, right? Because you don't want to get pissed off because then your emotions are now driving how you respond. And
so how do you respond when your 16-year-old says, I don't want to go to Nana's birthday?
Yeah, I completely understand. And honestly, neither do I. But here's the thing. Do you love her? Yes. And how do you think it's going to make her feel if you don't go? And what kind of character and value do you have as a person? And don't you think it's going to make you feel like a good person to show up for your grandma? Like sometimes in life, the decision to make is don't go because it makes her feel good. Go because it makes you know that you're a good person because you show up for people that show up for you.
So let them is not necessarily for kids or even teenagers. Let them acknowledge their feelings, but not
and don't
let them
override them like a psycho bitch like I used to be. Like, I don't care how you feel. Get in the car. Get your stuff. We're running late anyway. Like, do you see see the difference? And do you see the other thing that I was doing in the role play? See, as a parent, you are responsible for your children's emotional well-being. You're responsible for feeding them, for keeping them safe, for providing for them. And you're also responsible, more importantly, for helping them figure out who they are and helping them understand what character means. And what I was doing, because I was able to say, let them be a 16-year-old, because no 16-year-old wants to go to a grandmother's birthday. For crying out loud, they want to be on their phones with their friends. That's an age-appropriate reaction to that situation. So me reacting like a tornado or a volcano just makes them wrong. And what I do instead is I get control of myself and I act like a mature adult instead of an immature adult who then barfs and vents at my child. I acknowledge how they feel and then I step into my role, which is this is a teaching opportunity.
Which is really nice of you because I'd be like, we're late. Get your ass in the car.
Why do you think all three of my children are in therapy, Katie? I only learned this shit 2 years ago.
When you did that video, as you mentioned, it went crazy. And a lot of people have let them tattooed on their bodies now, Mel.
Yes.
Do you
thousands.
have a let them tattoo?
I do not.
So you include photos of that in the book. I mean, isn't it just crazy to be able to have two simple words have such a tremendous impact on people's lives.
It is so cool to know how helpful this is. Because the other thing about simple, and this is also something that I strive for, which is if it's intellectual, I'm not going to remember it. If it's complicated, I can't apply it. And what I find to be very unhelpful is that in the space of trying to improve your life, there's an obsession with talking about science. But for the normal person just going through their day-to-day life, trying to apply it is a whole different thing. And so if I can't remember it, I can't use it. And if it's not simple, I can't share it with a friend or with a child. And so to me, the beauty of this is if you're in a situation where you're really struggling, and especially if it's like a relationship situation where somebody's treating you poorly, or you're with somebody that has a narcissistic personality style, the power isn't in managing the other person. The power is saying, let them, because a couple things happen when you say let them. Let's say you've got somebody who is constantly giving you the silent treatment. You know, the kind of person, they get flooded with their emotions, which means they're basically an 8-year-old child in a big body, and they will go silent on you, which is a childlike immature behavior. That's the same thing as pouting in a corner as a child. You're trying to draw the adult over to you because you don't know how to deal with your emotions. That's what the silent treatment is. The silent treatment is me cutting off communication as a punishment to you because I can't handle my emotions. That is immature. And I actually think it's emotional abuse. Why on earth would you give power to somebody like that? Instead, when you say let them, you recognize that person's acting like a child. I am not their parent. I'm going to let them deal with their emotions. And then I'm going to take a step back because I'm not going to waste time and energy managing that. I'm going to let them. But here's the thing. You always have power because I get to choose what I think about this. I can say this person's a jerk, or I can say, oh, this is an example of what Mel Robbins is talking about. This is just a person who's emotionally underdeveloped, and they don't have the skill yet of emotional maturity and management and self-awareness. So I also recognize I'm not wasting time and energy on this. So you get to choose whether or not you vilify that person, or whether or not you just see it with very clear eyes and recognize what's yours to manage and what's not. And that creates space and compassion. And then 2, let me remind myself, I get to choose how I respond and whether or not I respond at all. And I can remove myself from any conversation, any text chain, any dinner table, any interview, any date, anytime I choose.
So I was going to ask you to close the circle on the let them and how it leads to the let me, because that's such an important part of this.
Yes.
So tell me what's in it for me.
Everything.
Just
Everything.
to be selfish. Yeah.
Everything. Do you want to feel peaceful? Do you want to feel powerful? Do you want to go through life and insulate yourself from all the stressful things that happen all day long? Of course you do. And you can't do that without first giving up control of everything around you. So you can't get sober until you stop drinking. You can't take control of your life or your confidence or your power until you stop trying to control everyone and everything around you. And when you say let them, 2 things happen. Number 1, you detach. So now one of the reasons why this is also so extraordinarily powerful is because I didn't just create this out of thin air. This exists. The let them theory exists in a time continuum that dates all the way back to ancient history. The let them theory is deeply rooted in Stoicism, Buddhism, radical acceptance, detachment theory. So the power that you're feeling is from thousands of years of people really talking about Stoic philosophy or being a practicing Buddhist or learning about radical acceptance. In fact, we were with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s son and his daughter-in-law couple days ago, and as we were talking about the let them theory, they reflected that this is representative of Dr. Martin Luther King's work, because that is the heart of civil disobedience and peaceful protest, that you have to learn that the power is not in the oppressor, the power is in your response to it. That peace, that love, that non-response at times is so much more powerful than hate. And that's the only thing that's in your control. And so I know that this works because I have such deep respect for the lineage and the history through religion, through philosophy, through psychology, through some of the most important moments in human time, about what actually created power and breakthroughs for people for moments in time, and it's in focusing on the power that you have. You know, Professor Margaret Mead said that quote that you and I both love, which is, you know, it just takes a handful of committed citizens to change everything. In fact, that's the only thing that ever has. And if you don't like what you see happening in your community or in your family or in your marriage or with your adult children, don't look to them to fix it. Look to yourself. Stop underestimating your power, your ability, through your energy and your action to shift anything over time. And that's why I think this has resonated.
I would think this would be the anti let me fix it mentality, right?
It's not. See, most of us, when we say let's fix this, are obsessed with with the thing we're trying to fix or what other people are doing. Stop looking at what everybody else is doing and come inward and drop into your values and your character and decide what matters to you. And the way that you know that something matters to you is not because you're thinking about it, it's because you're doing something about it. And when you are spending so much time, I'm worried about this, or I'm worried about that, or that person's frustrating me, what's happening every time you allow somebody else's behavior or what they say to hurt you, to impact you, is you're draining the very energy and time that you need to get to work or to get out of the relationship. And one other thing I want to be very clear about, because, you know, one of the things that a lot of people, you know, when they are saying, well, what about this? It's always about kids, and you're 100% right. This is not for little kids. This is for you as an adult to actually be the mature adult and to be in control of your emotions and to model behavior and values for your children, because that's who they learn it from. And most of the problems that we have right now are because we've got a bunch of adults walking around that are basically immature 8-year-olds inside of big bodies, and we're treating them like adults instead of seeing that they're little children emotionally. Let them, because you can't control them. Nobody learns how to regulate their emotions or be emotionally mature until they decide to when they're an adult. Like, little kids need to be taught this from adults who know how to do this. The more peaceful you are, the more in control of your emotions that you are, the more your kids will be.
I would imagine this theory also stops you from being super reactive,
Well,
right?
it's
and having your
non-reactive.
lizard brain take over, which only ends up escalating a situation and creating more conflict, right?
Yes. Well, let me talk about a fact. So Dr. Aditi Nurkar, who is one of the world's leading medical doctors, who is an expert in stress. She ran the largest stress management clinic for the entire Harvard system, professor at Harvard Medical School. She's researched the topic of stress and the state of people in the United States anyway at this moment in time. Based on her research, it's in her book, The 5 Resets, New York Times bestseller. She's super interesting.
Oh,
You
I
would
know
love.
her.
Yes.
We've promoted her book a lot, and
Yep.
we're Instagram friends.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, her research and medical opinion is that 80% of people right now are living in a chronic state of stress. What does that mean? That doesn't mean you feel stressed. That means, medically speaking, you are waking up and going through your day in a stress response, which means, medically speaking, the executive functioning, the prefrontal cortex, is not in control of you. The little amygdala, the little second brain, the almond brain, the lizard brain, as you called it, which is only designed to come online for short bursts, it activates your fight or flight, oh my God, stress response, she believes, medically speaking, 80% of people are actually stuck in that state since the pandemic. And that's why you're seeing such high rates of burnout. That's why you're seeing such polarization. That's why you're seeing people being so emotional and reactive. That's why you're seeing such ridiculous behavior play out in public settings. That's why you're seeing people not able to focus. That's also why you're seeing people's inner critic louder than ever. It's not a stress situation. It's a medical issue. And that's important to understand, because the single biggest source of stress for people is actually things that they can't control. And now we have a problem where we're living in a world where we think that people are rational, but medically speaking, we are in a state where we are not really in control of our thinking. And if you really just stop and consider your family, or you think about what you see online, or you think about our inability to talk to each other if we have different opinions, or the rise in estrangement, or the rise in ghosting, it's because of that.
It's interesting that you take a simple concept and then you dig deep. You've obviously done a ton of research on various, philosophies and psychiatric studies and all that. So you have a lot of scholarly work that stands behind this whole kind of simple solution.
Right, because, one of the things, I don't know about you, but if somebody were to just say, just say let them, like you're going to immediately feel the release, which is why people get it tattooed on them. It's a reminder to not let the little stuff bother you. And every time you use it, what's super cool is you're actually going to start to respect yourself more, because you're getting time and energy back, and you're going to start to see how often you gave it away, which means you're going to protect it more. And then when you say, let me, there's only 3 things you can ever control. It's your thoughts about what just happened and what you want to do next. It's whether or not you want to respond and how you respond. And it's how you allow your emotions to rise and fall and what you do with them, or whether you let them run you over. That's it. That's all you got.
Speaking of emotions, I think you make some interesting observations about jealousy and about comparison. And I think we live in a world where, when I was growing up, I didn't know who had what. I mean, I might have known the neighbors got a fancy new car.
Right.
Could afford to do something my family couldn't, but it wasn't, it wasn't in my face all the time.
Yes.
And now we are seeing all these different life experiences. And in addition to Margaret Mead, I love the quote that comparison is the thief of joy, which I thought was Emerson, but it's actually Teddy Roosevelt. Although a lot of people, I guess, have been, that quote has been attributed to a lot of people. You talk about using those in a positive way, that jealousy is actually not a bad thing.
No, unless you're wishing somebody bad. But again, let them. Like, I can't control whether or not what somebody does with their jealousy, but I can teach you how to use it to your advantage. So first of all, jealousy is deeply personal because it's tied to what you desire. And you're never going to feel jealous over something you don't want. Like, I'm not jealous in the least when I see somebody pull up in a Lamborghini. I don't want one. I don't care about it. There's nothing that you could do to make me jealous of somebody. But if I see somebody that, I was just talking to my friend Jay Shetty, and he has really...
Doesn't he have the most beautiful eyes? Not to be
Oh my gosh, they're
weird.
like light green. So we were just hanging out the other day, and we're really, really good friends. And that's the other thing I want to say. The very people that you're jealous of because they're doing what you're doing should be your closest friends, because they're the only people on the planet that know what you're going through. And what a shame is it that you look at people that are in your industry or that are doing what you want to do as competitors or enemies that you're against, because they should actually be your greatest collaborators. And this brings me to something that I didn't understand until just a couple years ago. Success, happiness, love, friendship, money, it's in limitless supply. It's there for everyone to create for themselves. And yet we think that when somebody else wins, somehow it's our loss. we go through life as if it's some kind of competition. It is not.
Or a zero-sum game, right?
Correct. I don't even know what that means.
I
Like
don't
that's
really
a
either.
that's one of those things where I'm like, that's a little
What does that
That's
mean
like I don't know. You're
exactly?
very smart, so I'm not sure
I don't
what that
know.
means.
I think it just means, what does zero-sum game mean, really, you guys? That if somebody else does well, there's nothing for you.
I guess I literally and so in the game of life, this was this huge revelation with Let Them, because I used to look at my friends and be like, why are they on Katie Couric? When is she gonna go? And then I'd be like, oh, chill. And what happens when you do that? Why is my friend's getting engaged? They got a new kitchen. She has a beautiful handbag. She just got a promotion. Now she's getting married. They're pregnant. I'm not. What does that do? That sort of energy just rises the stress in you. And then you start thinking about it and you tell yourself it's never going to be me.
And I love this idea of upward comparison versus downward comparison, which is basically envy versus gratitude.
Yes,
right?
we default to looking up and above and seeing people that are doing better, and then using somebody else's example to shame ourselves or beat ourselves up. It's never going to be me. There's already too many podcasts. I shouldn't launch one now. Or I'm never going to be able to renovate my kitchen because she just did. I can't have white cabinets because my friend is going to think I somehow copied her. Yes, exactly. What can you know what ridiculousness this is? And so learning to say let them taught me something important about life. Other people never block your way. They only lead the way. Because you're not actually playing against people in life, you're playing with them. And if you can say, let them have their success, let them have their Lamborghini, let them have $1 million, let them get married, let them have the love story, let them earn $1 million, let them do this, let them do that. Now you're detaching because you're only jealous because you want that thing. So let them lead the way. And then say, let me remind myself that if they've done it, there's a formula. And if I'm not so damn emotional and jealous, I can wake up and follow the formula. And if I just let me remind myself that if I put my head down, I can slowly chip away at it, and I can 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 5 years from now, I can save my money, I can change my job, I can learn how to be financially responsible, I can learn how to find love again. Let them, because the more you let them lead the way, and then you say, let me, the faster you're going to find the way to all the things that you want.
At the end of the day, I guess your book is really about control and letting go and not sweating the small stuff or really the big stuff, right, Mel? Sometimes letting go can be very painful, especially, I think, during these divided times. And you write in your book.
But this isn't letting go. It's very different, I believe.
Okay.
Because for me, being a complete type A control freak, I don't want to let anything go because it means I lost. See, when you say, I just have to let it go, I have to let it go that, they voted for that person, I just have to let it go. Doesn't that feel like you're surrendering to defeat?
Yes.
That's why I hate it. I've never been able to let anything go. Let them is very different because let them is you seeing things as they are and allowing it without allowing it. And you are detaching from it, which means you are choosing to no longer put time and energy into it. And it's the opposite, because when I say I have to let it go, I feel defeated and less than. When I say let them, I feel superior because I'm kind of like, I see what you're doing over there. And I recognize that my time is better spent attacking this a different way.
But also, I think you mean let them do whatever they're going to do, because as you write in the book, these people will reveal who they are through your detachment.
Yes.
And allowing them to show their true character, true selves.
Yes. So, some people will say, wait, I'm just supposed to be treated like a doormat? I'm supposed to let them abuse me? Absolutely not. You're already doing that. When you say let them, you're actually for the first time doing what psychologists need you to do, which is you're detaching from the person, and you're probably seeing them for the first time. Like your mother-in-law has a narcissistic personality style. Let her have one. She's not changing until she wants to, because people only change when they're ready to change, and they're never going to change for you because people change when they feel like changing for themselves. fundamental law of human nature that we get completely wrong. So hoping someone's going to change, wishing they would change, makes you brace, makes you have expectations. And she's not the problem. She's living her life. You're the problem because you're actually over there managing and engaging with somebody as if they're not who they are. So let her be narcissistic. Because when you let her be narcissistic, you take a step back and you see her exactly as she is for the very first time. And then you get to choose. Let me decide how much time and energy I pour into this. Let me decide how much I show up or not. Let me actually learn about narcissism and understand she wasn't born this way, she was made this way through childhood neglect. And she doesn't even know it and never will. So let me create space to have the relationship be different because I'm going to be different. Because when you accept people as they are and as they aren't, you now get to decide how you're going to show up and your energy immediately shifts. And so it allows you, if you're in a situation, and I find this with dating, I find this with challenging personality styles, that the problem isn't the other person. The problem is that you live in a fantasy in your head explaining away bad behavior. There is no confusing behavior. People's behavior is the truth. It's your inability to accept it that's confusing you. And so when you let somebody be who they are, now you are recognizing who you're dealing with. And then you can say the let me part. And you can say, let me decide how much access this person has. Let me decide whether or not I'm going to make it my job to manage this person. Let me decide how much access they have. Let me be the mature adult and create space. Because if this is a person that, I find challenging or that I profoundly disagree with their opinions, but my value is to try to be connected to family, now I'm going in eyes wide open, knowing I've got to be the mature adult if this matters to me. You don't do it for them. You do it because it makes you feel good about you.
What kind of feedback have you gotten from people who have incorporated this in their daily
gosh.
lives? I'm assuming if people are getting let them tattooed on their bodies, you're hearing some interesting anecdotes about how this is working in people's lives.
It's everything. It's people leaving abusive relationships, which based on the psychology is extraordinarily difficult to do because they're recognizing when they start to truly see somebody's behavior is the truth about who they are and where you stand. When you detach and you see it and accept it because this is what's happening, now you are better prepared to make a decision about how you're going to respond to it and what you're going to do about it and who has access and who doesn't. So lots of people who are either leaving situations that are not healthy or realizing, if you wake up every morning, you dread your job, and you spend your weekends drinking and blowing off steam because of stress at work and you're complaining about your boss and how they pass you over, let them pass you over. Because your career is your responsibility and you shouldn't give it to your boss. And if you're not getting the respect you deserve or you're not getting the advancement that you've earned and you keep getting lip service, why don't you let them string you along and remind yourself, let me remind myself there's about 8 million jobs on LinkedIn right now. Let me put in the work to go get one. Let me remind myself I'm not stuck in this thing. And
maybe
career.
Go back to the 5-second rule.
Yes, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Do it instead of thinking about it. And so the examples are endless because there are endless ways that we allow things beyond our control, whether it's being stuck in an elevator like you and I both were this week. Let them take their time and let me just sit here and relax, do what I'm going to do, because that way I stay peaceful. Or it is you realizing that you are dating somebody right now who will not commit to you because they don't want to put a label on it. And you're sitting here like an idiot telling yourself that if they keep telling you they love you when you're drunk and having sex, that's a commitment. No, it's not. That is an orgasm. That is not a commitment. If they slink out the door like a cat in the morning, let them. Because they're revealing that you're actually not a priority. They're revealing that they don't want to put a label on it because you don't matter. You're a convenience. And what's important about that, even though it might be painful to be the single friend again or to realize you've just spent another 6 months chasing the fantasy instead of dating the reality. That's way better than keeping yourself trapped in a jail of your own making. So let them reveal that you're not a priority, and then let me remind myself that I get to choose and create the love that I deserve. And the number one step in doing that is saying no to the people who are treating you less than you deserve.
So now I know what let them is, but what is the let me part, and what's in it for me?
Everything's in it for you. Power, peace. It's amazing because when you say let them, you detach from something you can't control. When you say let me, you take your power back because you prompt yourself in any moment, whether it's at the grocery store line that's stressing you out or it's something that somebody said that hurt you. Let me is where you actually get to choose what you do in response to it. Because what you think, what you do, how you process your emotions, the let me part is everything because that's where your power is. And you always have power. And that's what this taught me, and it's what it's going to teach you.
I love that you take your life experience and then translate it into great practical tips for people. But have you ever gotten really bad advice? I mean, here you're giving people such good guidance and advice. What's the worst advice you've ever gotten?
Ignore it and it'll go away. Things don't go away. Because shoving something down or pushing it off to the side or saving it for later, like when you avoid dealing with something now, it gets way worse later.
And what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Let them. No, seriously, it is, I've come across a lot of incredible things in my life. And like you, I have had the very rich and empowering experience of sitting down with people way smarter than me who are doing extraordinary research and all kinds of stuff. And it's just dazzling to learn so many things. But I have never, ever experienced the level of power and peace that comes from using let them and let me. And the funny thing is that the more that you learn to let people be who they are, and you learn how to love them as they are and as they aren't, the better your relationships get. And that's the thing that is the huge bonus, because your relationships are the single biggest driver of a healthy and a happy and meaningful life. We know this based on, so much research. You talk about it on your podcast all the time. And I was the kind of person that created so much unnecessary stress and friction and frustration and tension. And what's available to you when you say let them, and you allow a human being to be a human being, and you allow your adult kids to navigate their life without jumping in and fixing everything or thinking you know best, is that you actually honor and love them.
I was going to say, so let them isn't always rejection. It's not kind of saying let them, screw them, let them do their own thing, and I don't give a shit. It's really let them, and it's a way to create more intimacy and a stronger relationship.
Yes, and connection and understanding. And the let me part is where you take responsibility for your response. I mean, writing this book with my 25-year-old daughter healed our relationship because we said let them at each other all day long because other people are annoying. I mean, I think your family teaches you how to love people you hate at times. And because you talk about politics and on this a lot, and there are so many families that are struggling with connection, one of the things that I don't want people to do is I don't want you to just be like, let them, and then just cut people off. I think that's a sign of emotional immaturity. If you haven't had the conversation about what's bothering you and what you need, they're not the problem, you are. Because you haven't actually taken the time to step toward someone and explain in a way that is non-judgmental how you feel and what you need. And so my hope is that one of the things that happens is that as people use let them and let me, especially in a moment of tremendous divide, that if there's somebody in your life and you deeply value connection and family and friendship and understanding and compassion, simply saying let them is going to have you like literally cut people out. The let me part is where the power is. Because if you want to be closer to people, don't expect them to understand you. The power in being a mature adult is to say, okay, if this person that I love deeply has made a decision, whether it's in their love life or it's with addiction, because one of the other things that I discovered in researching this book and talking to world-renowned experts is nobody gets sober until being drunk is harder than doing the very difficult work to change and to face what you're scared of. And I personally feel like we're not going to come together until each one of us makes a decision that figuring out how to understand people that we're angry at right now is the way. And so when you say let them, you're giving people the space to feel what they feel and believe what they believe and vote how they vote and do what they do. You're not condoning it. You don't agree with it. You might not understand it. But if you do want to build a bridge, the first step for me personally, and this is with my friends and with family members that I don't understand their beliefs. I don't understand why they think what they think. I don't understand some of the things that they do. It's easy to sit in my corner in judgment and in hurt and in upset. But if I also value connection, compassion, and understanding, and I realize I can't control what somebody else thinks or what they just did, and it's not my job to, but I do have a choice about whether I step toward them and say, can you help me understand why you believe what you believe? Can you help me understand why this is what you think or what you did? Can you help me understand like how you feel about this thing? That's how we're going to build bridges back to people that we care about that we're upset with. That's how you do it. There is no other way. And if you're waiting for someone else to do it, let them not do it. You be the one, because you have the power.